If you enjoyed the channel and our video content and would like to support us, you can do this in a couple of ways. You can sign up to our Patreon site, which is a monthly subscription to one of our 4 tiers, each giving you something different from early access interviews up to exclusive unseen footage. There's also the option of a one-off donation via PayPal, which allows you the option to donate an amount of your choice. Both options really help to keep this channel going and to continue putting out regular content for you good folk. So please take a look at aircrewinterview.tv/donate, and I thank you in advance. Thank you and enjoy. Paul, yeah, we had a great interview a couple of weeks ago, but let's talk about BFM DACT in the Harrier and the Super Hornet. How did it fare against, the types of that time?
Well, the highlight, I think, of all that, which I managed not to bring up last time, Mike, was I actually managed to get 2 sets of DACT done with the F-22 in the Super Hornet, which was awesome. That was a really cool thing to see, actually, because both aircraft actually had their strengths and weaknesses, and I know yourself and your listeners will be there saying, "Well, surely the F-22 absolutely wiped the floor." Yeah. And the answer is, in the main it did, but actually, I fought, and this is another of my horrendous detachments that I had to go through, Mike. I fought against the Hawaiian National Guard out in Hawaii.
Oh, nice.
With their aeroplanes. And I'm not entirely sure how the mod state works throughout the F-22 fleet, but my understanding is that the Alaskan guys were the guys who got the sort of full-up variant. And so when we went against the Hawaiian contingent and then the guys in New Mexico at Holloman, they didn't have 9X, for example. So actually, when we were showing a bit of you show me yours, I'll show you mine type tricks, and they were demonstrating some of the things the Raptor could do, and then we'd demonstrate how the Super Hornet could pirouette in certain situations, and then we'd show them how far off bore sight you could throw a 9X shot. I remember one of them saying, "That's pretty cool, actually." So it was a great experience.
And did you ever go up against the Legacy Hornets, the C models?
In the Sea Harrier, yes. And that, what was really strange about that was I encountered, we essentially had one carrier west of, I think it was Corsica, and us east of Corsica, and we used to meet up and butt heads. And on one particular sortie, I ended up doing a bit of BFM against a Hornet, and then bizarrely ended up merging with an F-14 as well.
Wow.
I always got the impression, though, I was never sure. I'm not sure to this day whether that F-14 was actually part of the exercise we were part of. If you see what I mean, they've got a massive air group. There'll have been all sorts of aircraft flowing in and out for various reasons. My memory of the Hornet that we merged with was one of the old and bolds in our formation said, "Oh, they don't like it slow." And I thought, well, that's a bit odd, because that's the one thing they're famed for, is the low speed, high alpha fight. But we'd separated from that, and I got a radar contact and saw this magnificent, huge thing flying towards me. My recollection of the first merge with an F-14, Mike, was that I could see individual panels. Usually you see an aeroplane, et cetera, but this thing was so big, it was actually possible to see the bits it was made of as well, which was cool.
But with the F-14, did it have its wings fully swept, or was it out? When you saw it, you'd be like, "Oh, that's a big bugger."
I think that they were swept. I do have a memory. I know exactly how we passed. We passed right to right, and then we ended up, I think he reversed, so it was single circle, and I seem to recall by the time we crossed going nose high into a slow speed fight, then he had his wings spread, which would have made sense. But to be honest, I don't remember much more about the fight. I think I was it sounds ridiculous, but a little bit giddy that I was merging with an F-14. It's a bit of a life moment for people like myself, I suppose.
That's pretty cool. But when you get into these engagements, like so, like the F-14 engagement, like did you have a debrief with the F-14 guys, or was it just like you go back to base, they go back to base, or was there was like an interchange there?
A bit of both. It's critical to debrief. You'll always win a single type debrief every time. So good examples of that would be maybe working with the F3s over between Newcastle and Lucas. I remember once coming down and thinking we'd mopped up with them, and then it turned out that one of our guys had done a poor job, and we'd been absolutely malleted by an F3 that we'd never seen. So it's only really when you go to the it's only really when you go to the air combat instrumented ranges that you actually get to see what goes on and go, oh, I get it. On the boat, that's quite hard. So it might be that you're from the Invincible class carriers, you'd be phoning Whitehall to get them to phone a foreign number to try and get you through to a ready room on a CVN. Never likely to happen. But you always try to get a shot log through. We took this amount of shots. This is what happened. And back in the day, that used to be by fax. So you would fax a sheet of sort of 20, 30 shots off. I remember calling, for example, Land Divisio when we'd done some BFM against Rafale. They were actually, I think, of all on my first tour, the Rafale was probably the fruitiest that we came across, because we did a fabulous mission, Mike. We were fabulous for all the wrong reasons. We were something like 8 Sea Harriers versus Rafale, Mirage, and Super Etendards, and it was really quite unscripted. And so we set up basically in two caps, one pointing a bit south, one pointing a bit north, just looking into France from the Atlantic. And what they basically did was myself and my wingman, we got muddled up with 4 Mirage 2000s, which we dealt with. That was no problem at all. In fact, they didn't cause us much trouble because they ran away, and they'd obviously not really done their homework on the AMRAAM. So we shot them all from behind, essentially, before they could cause us any problems. Meanwhile, in the middle, 2 Rafales were causing absolute carnage. And I remember, RAF Valley used to teach this tactic, and someone called it the beer can, because you sort of flow in the top of a beer can of airspace, kill everyone in it at the bottom. And I tried to do that against the Rafale, and the beer can was just too small. I couldn't turn tightly enough to get inside them. And these 2 Rafales were, it appeared, had no limit to their nose authority. And so we pretty much had, I don't think we had all 8 of us, but we certainly had 4, maybe 6 Sea Harriers trying to get shots at in this really quite close fight, loads of flares going everywhere, these Rafales seemingly pointing at people getting rid of their full flare load. Great fun. And that's when we heard that we'd messed up, and the Super Etendards were coming in from the north, and they'd followed an air route out over the sea, and were now coming due south at the carrier, 12 of them in a line, all at low level, nothing we could do about it. And they did a fabulous job on us that day. They really, really did. And now, we got down, and you could say we weren't the most popular people on the aircraft carrier anyway. But, in the debrief, the guys are saying that the for example, the close-in weapon system was just trying to latch one to another, and the guys in the ops room couldn't believe the amount of aircraft that were just about to monster them. But the question you asked was, did we get a debrief? And in that one, yes, I did end up actually managing to phone the Rafale lead at Land Divisio to say, well, what I made that went your way, not ours, basically, and then talking through what we could learn from it.
And how does that work? Like going into the nitty gritty, have you got the number for the carrier? Like, how does that work? In a technical sense.
It is exactly that. You and this was just when email was becoming a thing, bizarrely. But and one of the things I've always said is how we got a carrier group, 2 carrier groups to the South Atlantic, no idea. But you just got a phone number. They know the Yeovilton exchange number. We would know the Land Divisio exchange number. You just phone them up, and then you go through actually a very, very well regimented, rigorous shot log, Mike, which was right.
Yeah.
Who are you? What was your game plan? How many? Any alibis? Was anything not working? And then go, right, who's got the first shot? And you can just crack through it very quickly, down to minutes and seconds. What was the effect? What did you see? What did they see? Etc. The art and science of debriefing air to air is very well set. It's just made slightly harder by being on a satellite phone that cuts out every so often, for example.
And it's like, again, like being a bit technical, is it like yourself that calls up? It's like, okay, I want to speak to this person, or is it someone else who does the job?
No, it's exactly that. So it's down to the formation leader to lead the debrief,
Right.
and then you'll do your own shots. So right fellas, who you start with safety points. Did anyone almost fly into a rafale?
Yeah.
Did anyone almost fly into the sea? Did anyone break any training rules? Then take your own shots, go away, compare that to the enemy, Red Force, call them what you will, and then come back and say, right, listen up, fellas, that went nothing like what we thought it did, or or guys, all in all, yeah, it was pretty much how we saw it. Yeah, good job. Let's go for a coffee type thing.
And I want to pick up one point I actually didn't mention in the interview. Like you said, like you were in the Sea Harrier, but you saw the silhouette of the Typhoon. How did the Sea Harrier fare against the Typhoon? Because I want to know that, like, and I'm sure our viewers want to know that.
That was actually in a GR9. So
it was GR9. Sorry.
Yeah. I was lucky. I did one of the early trials against developmental, I assume, Typhoons in the Sea Harrier, and so Sea Harrier wise, we guilty probably of comparing the Typhoon to the Rafale. And we'd seen a bit of the Rafale earlier, and I think maybe the Rafale matured earlier than the Typhoon. That right. I seem to recall having more to do with the Land Visio wing and battling against Rafale before we got asked to participate with Typhoon. And I think the work we did with Typhoon was actually to do with the export or not to Singapore. They seemed to be they wanted to practice against certain dispositions, etc. And this isn't an exaggeration. We could see them from a long way away. I don't know whether that was because we were in Wales and that was a clean RF environment looking north. Generally, I don't know what it was about the Blue Vixen, but in a clean RF environment, it performed very, very well. So, for example, trying to hunt jaguars in Devon was nothing like the radar performance you might get in Scotland, where you get a very, very long range pickup. So I don't know whether that was maybe atmospheric ducting or whether it was the cleanliness of the environment. But against those early Typhoons, them sort of coming out of Wharton and turning south through Wales and us setting up down towards Cardiff and pushing up towards them, we could see them from a fair old way away. I don't think in the Sea Harrier from memory I ever played blue air against the Typhoon. I think I was only red. So and this is one of the big things that folks sometimes don't realise, Mike, is that when you hear, I went on an exercise and I got 10 kills. Yeah, but that's because the wonderful jets that were against you, the F-16s, 18s, 15s, blah, they were actually doing a very good job, a very professional job of pretending to be dumb MiG-29s. So it's very rare that you get an actual F-15 versus F-18 grudge match, full up, both using their own system. So that was my recollection of fighting the Typhoon, was the ability to see it.
And obviously, like, you went on an exchange with the the US Navy and stuff like that. But how did the US Navy view the Typhoon? Because like Typhoon, F-18E, they're kind of similar. How did they view themselves? Did they think it was a good thing?
I think you have to assume that foreign military folk have never heard of your aeroplane. Yes, they might see one. So for example, when I did red flag on the Super Hornet, the Typhoons were coming to red flag, but they would be on the next one. They would be on, more red flags, a bit like a bidding process at times, and you'll have a coalition flag, then you'll have an American flag, then you'll have and different people will be invited to different events. So you'd be surprised. But one of my great impressions from red flag was that the US Air Force didn't know what the Super Hornet was, because they thought it was largely comparable to an F-18 Charlie. Yeah. And I remember even when I was there with the Sea Harrier, I think we were bored one day, so we went down to the USAF weapons school just to sort of say hello. I can't remember. I think it wasn't anything more purposeful than that. And we introduced ourselves, and they said hi, and we said hi, and they said, what do you fly? And we said Sea Harrier, and they said, never heard of it. What is it? And we said, well, if you think of an A-18E, but with a blue Vixen radar in the front, obviously eyes are glazing over by now. We said, well, think of it as better than the APG-65, and think of it as being able to support the AIM-120 Bravo. At which point the USAF Weapons School is, well, how the hell did you get hold of the AIM-120? And so they'd never heard of us, didn't realise we used AMRAAM. So I think that's probably fair. There was one US Navy instructor when I was at Meridian on the T-45 that had done a Typhoon exchange, so he was full up, but he knew everything about it. Okay. But I think the overall awareness was probably quite low.
Yeah, because I think the Typhoon's come into its own, but I think that everyone knows a Super Hornet, and obviously with the Top Gun movie coming up, I think everyone's going to be like, right, I want to fly that. So how do you feel about the Top Gun movie coming up? Actually, I'm going to ask you that because you flew it, so it must be amazing.
It is, but I've got a theory actually, in that the Typhoon and the Super Hornet are actually largely similar success-wise, because I think you can only really judge an aircraft's success by its export success. Yes. Those are the people who get the choice, aren't they? You don't necessarily get a choice whether or not you buy your own aeroplane, but the export customers do, and they've actually had not dissimilar success, I would guess, where you look at who they've been sold to and how they've been doing. But Top Gun, mate, the footage looks fabulous, doesn't it? It looks absolutely incredible. And I think, that there's already, it hasn't even, when's it released? May 25th, something like that? The photo of those,
think, isn't it?
Is that right?
Yeah.
But the still of those F models all contrailing as they go down a lake or something, that's already iconic, isn't it? And you don't even know how it fits into the film. And it would appear that they've had some damn good access, total access to enough aircraft and enough aircrew to do a bloody good job. I can't wait.
Yeah, because you wouldn't get that on the RAF, would you? I think it would be very limited. If you were going to do a Top Gun version of the RAF or the Royal Navy, I don't think it would happen.
Yeah, and also there's cultural reasons why it wouldn't be quite so gripping as well, aren't there? But it's a shame, isn't it? Because over the years, I think that we've been too harsh in the British military of trying to sort of keep ourselves cut off, and there was almost this skill in not engaging with the public, whereas Top Gun's a great example, isn't it? Yes. I was saying the other day, you can argue as much as you like about who's the coolest out of QYs, AYs, patch wearers in the States. Top Gun solved that for us. It's the strike fighter weapons guys. It's that simple.
You win.
Yep, you win. You're done. Hollywood has sorted this out for us.
Exactly, yeah. But one thing I want to ask you, actually, we have some pretty nerdy people on the channel, and obviously, with your helmet, which did you find more comfortable, the British or the Americans?
The British standard helmet is far, far better than the American helmet, and I don't want to annoy anyone. That one I showed you when I was down here. I don't know. It's a bit like a ping pong ball that's been hollowed out and had some styrofoam put on the inside, and the visor, which is all that's between your eyes and the MDC when you eject. It's on the end of an elastic band.
Yeah, I've got my helmet somewhere around here, but the English seem like it's the click down ones, and it seems more solid.
Yeah, I agree. So, and there was. I seem to recall, just with the American one, I probably got it wrong, but when I wore my night vision goggles, I just used to flick the visor up and just have it tapping on the back of my helmet, so you could your goggles there, and you end up going, this can't possibly be right, because like you say, on the American one, you've got clickers, you've got two, and you've got both visors, haven't you? In the American one, you actually have to take one off, which is the poppers on the side. Buttons, So if you want a dark visor, light dark visor, you actually have to change it, which, so I didn't think that was a great bit of kit, to be honest. And actually, I'd say that extended to more of the survival equipment as well. The British anti-G trousers and life-saving jerkins, etc., and you then strap into the chair, is by far a better system than getting into a harness and then clipping the harness into the chair with the Coke fittings that can get jammed, etc. Obviously each to their own, and the US are free to do whatever they like. But it's I was overjoyed when I saw that the F-35 you actually strapped into. I thought, oh golly, if we end up doing the harness thing, then the boys and girls aren't going to like that.
Yeah. And did you get to keep your Royal Navy helmet, or did you just like have your US Navy helmet?
Just the US Navy one. No, I don't have a.
You didn't
British
nick that one.
No, I didn't nick that one. Was it the Mark IV, Mark 10? I can't remember.
Mark 10, yeah. MK10, yeah. But Paul, let's talk about your time in Afghanistan. I think you flew the GR7 and GR9. Tell us about this and how it came about.
Joint Force Harrier was deployed to Kandahar, I think in 2003-ish. And they served there for over 5 years. It was a 3-squadron rotation, and that's how I came about there. When they went out there, then Kandahar was not quite the essentially international airport it was in 2008, 2010, and became so. There were actually very few choices for the aircraft that could operate there. It's 3,000 feet up in the air as well, so the air is very, very thin.
Yeah,
and there is a video out there that I'm sure all your folk are familiar with of a Harrier driver not quite getting the recovery right. That's a function both of the manoeuvre we did to get back in to protect against the SAMs, but also the heat and the altitude, meaning that the air's very thin. So I went out there as a flight commander with the Naval Strike Wing in 2008, and we were out there from July, August time, and we handed off to 4 Squadron Royal Air Forces. I get this wrong. What are the Royal Air Force called? I should know this. I'm going to embarrass myself, but it's number 4 brackets AC Squadron took over from us. Happy 4, as they called themselves, great bunch, and they came to relieve us so that we could go home for Christmas, essentially. So we operated out of Kandahar, which was in the south of the country, and the majority, but not exclusively, of our support was what was to Regional Command South and Southwest, which included Helmand, which included Task Force Helmand, which were our troops in there, but not exclusively. So some of the tasking was a little bit odd, and we would go all the way up to past Kabul, up to Kaust in the east. I know some guys got down the very thin neck of the country out where it meets the Chinese border or whatever, and we did some tasking out towards Pakistan. But the majority of our stuff was in the southwest. But then again, we could flow through that and go all the way up to Herat and the northwest as well. It really was a case of whatever we were asked to do, which was essentially a bidding process. The way it works is that the ground forces put a bid in for air support, and LUD, the KOC, just say, yeah, okay, these are our priorities. These are therefore the tasks that are going to get done. And our job was to go and support them. And you'd go through days, weeks where you would take off and go and do your support, as in you would get up in the morning, be told your job is to support this convoy. This is the forward air controller. This is where they're going. You go and do that. And then we go through like weeks on end where genuinely you would go gear up, flap up, talk to the command and control person, say, hello, this is me, I'm recoil 5-1 and 5-2, outbound for a particular task. And they say, no, you're not, you're going to troops in contact. And that would, so it got to the point where we were not complacent at all. You can't be a pixel of complacency in these things, but we got very, very used to rapid retasks, and we were essentially going straight into the close air support fight in those situations, and that's what we did. So our flying schedule, if you like, would be we'd launch a pair in the morning, we'd launch a pair in the afternoon, and we'd have a pair on ground alert, and then at night we'd launch a further pair and have 2 more on ground alert, and we just kept that going. I think we had a day off every 2 weeks, maybe every 3 weeks. I can't remember really.
Is that it?
Yeah, well, to be honest, mate, there's not much else to do in Kandahar, so the notion that
I suppose, yeah.
But on your days off, because people would have a day off. You were required to have a rest day every 7, but by the time you've bought yourself an orange juice and a bit of carrot cake and
you're bored
and a coffee, you go, Well, that was it. That was half an hour off. I'll wander to work and pretend I'm not at work. So it was a little bit phony, but the jets held up. I think we only had 8 theatre, I think, to do that frag that I just talked to you about. And we had a variety of fits as well. So when I first got out there, I think we maybe had 2 GR7s out there and the rest were 9s.
Right.
And a couple of tiled pods, but the rest were snipers. But when I first got out there, we were flying, the lead aircraft would fly with 2 1,000-pound paveway, 2 pluses, so GPS and laser.
Yeah.
And then the wingey would take 38 rockets, a 540 impact and a 540 airburst. And then that was our standard fit. If you wanted to, and you had enough time, you could swap the GPS-guided weapons for just legacy paveways. And the reason we do that is that they were far better for moving targets. So
right.
for if you thought you were going to be up against a mover, you probably want to get a legacy weapon on. The new one's just too damn clever, and they go to a specific point where actually you just wanted it to fall into the basket. And we also had Maverick over there as well if we needed it.
Oh, you had Mavericks, right. Okay.
And then weaponry-wise, we changed because we got the Paveway 4. So it no longer made sense for one to carry 540s, the other to carry LGBs when you had 500-pound class laser and GPS-guided weapons. So both of us then started flying with 2 Paveway 4s and 2 pods of rockets to give you 38 each. That was a really, really flexible weapon load, really. And by then, just to finish off the fits, we had, like I said, tiled was completely out of the picture by then. We had sniper, but we also had the Terma defensive aids pod that we were able to fit with. It had forward firing flares, backward firing flares, all sorts of flares. I said there's so many I can't really remember them. So you would end up with, like I said, 2 bombs, 2 pods of rockets, a sniper, a Terma, and possibly the recce pod as well. So you sort of, that would do you. For most situations, you're good.
And how did it affect like the airframe? Obviously, the Harrier is not known for speed, but how did it affect you like when you were carrying all these stuff?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, we were fast as fuck.
So yeah, the simple truth is that physics always wins, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So if you are dragging all that stuff through the air, yes, it is a high aerodynamic and high drag load, and actually you would get pilots new to theatre that you'd have to remind about that. I think something's wrong with my airplane, isn't it? There's nothing wrong with your airplane, mate. You're just covered in stuff. So it managed, but peculiar enough, what it did do was elongate the life of the airframe because you're not using any fatigue life if you're in the medium level close air support wheel. We'd go down occasionally if the troops needed a show of force before we elevated to weaponry. Zip across the target or the potential hostiles at 100 feet. But other than that, there was no real stress put on the airframe. So for 5 years, you're sort of getting a free fatigue life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, that makes sense. But for our viewers, because like obviously you flew the GR7 and GR9, what's the difference actually there?
The difference as far as outer mold line was nil, to be honest. It was all to do with integration. So, for example, the different mission computer, the navigation kit was upgraded from. It was quite sloppy in the GR7, I think, actually.
Okay.
Well, I came from the Sea Harrier, and in the Sea Harrier we had NavHars in the T-Birds, but had upgraded to IN GPS in the Sea Harrier Fare 2. So a really tight inertial nav and GPS solution. And that wasn't the case in GR, but the improved navigational kit was superb. So improved navigational kit and things such as better radios, the ability to take different weapons, and enabling modifications that never really enabled much in the fullness of time because we went out of service just as we were getting we went up to a capability E. And there were 2 different stages of it, and we were at EA or EB, can't remember, when the jet went out of service.
And I know our viewers are going to want to know this because, like, it's all over the internet. But do you think the Harrier was taken out of service too early?
Well, I think you have to. You can only conclude that it was because it was not past its sell-by date. It was still a relevant platform with something to offer. And obviously people will be crying till the end of time about whether or not another aeroplane should have been taken out. At the end of the day, though, in fairness to the people who made those tough decisions, you don't save money by trimming back numbers. You save money by closing bases and getting rid of forces. So something had to go. I think the argument about the Harrier probably would have centered around counterinsurgency, multi-role, CVS, etc., and the argument in favour of the GR4 probably around a slightly heavier bomb load, but the need for long runways, etc. So it would have been a motive, and I'm sure it swung either way. I think that the other lesson that it teaches us, Mike, to be honest, is that if you do not buy a future-proof airframe, at some point it won't have a future. So my view is that we should never have got the FA2. You know, the FA2 came into service the same year as the AV8B2 Plus did. Yes. You know, the Harrier, the YAV8B, the prototype AV8B, flew in 1981. Mm-hmm. So when we were learning lessons about the Falklands War and looking at how to modify the Harrier to be a better air defender, we were turning a blind eye to the fact that the Harrier 2 was here. And if you forward wind that, I know this is all with the benefit of hindsight now, but the kill the Harrier, kill the Sea Harrier decision, whatever you want to call it, was made easier for people by the limitations of the airframe. You know, like the GR7, GR9 didn't have a radar. And why not, for Christ's sake? It had a television in the nose, which it did nothing of any use as far as I could tell. It gave you a couple of weapon modes, but they weren't responsible for anything accurate that you could do. You're far better using a legacy one. So in answer to your question, was it taken out of service too soon? Yes. Do we mourn it every day? Yes. But I think that you've got to be positive about these things, haven't you? And you've just got to say, look, there are a bunch of us who can be rightly and fiercely proud of what we achieved, and the rest, you just got to roll with the punches, really. But them's the breaks, and we lost out.
And I've got a question here from one of our patrons. He wants to stay anonymous, but do you have any memorable stories from flying in Afghanistan?
Oh, yeah, well, Afghanistan was essentially the highlight of my career, Mike, to be honest. So, yes is the simple answer. And this is where you get into the subject of why we all like warplanes, is because they go to war, right? And I know that some people are quite squeamish about that at times and try to look at things through a slightly different lens, maybe the aesthetics of the aircraft, etc. But my view is very much that it's built for a reason, and in this case, it was close air support. So yeah, absolutely, including a couple of weapon drops near one of the FOB's forward operating bases down near Sangin, where the paratroopers were trying to sort out some enemy with 105mm howitzers. I think it was definitely something that was causing us a problem because of the vertical extent that the rounds were coming to. Right. And we in the end, the JTAC said, you know what, let's go upstairs, see if these guys can help. And my pod had malfunctioned, so I dropped the weapon, and my wingman then lays the weapon in, and you hear what you've always wanted to hear, which is direct hit, stand by for BDA. So those sorts of things were good. I remember once, and this sort of goes to the concept of the team being put together in peacetime. I was in Nad Ali, or overhead Nad Ali once, sort of nasty neighborhood, and let's be frank, like, nothing that we did in air-conditioned cockpits in Afghanistan is anything compared to what the boys and girls went through. I can imagine, Really have to accept that. We were just there to help. Those boys and girls are the heroes. But because of what we'd done in peacetime, and because of the Harrier's reputation, warranted or otherwise, for always being there, for never falling out, for trying to make it through the weather when the weather's rubbish, we got that great call of a platoon needed fire. There were French guys, there were American guys, there was I think even a special mission aircraft up, and the Special Forces JTAC said, right, everyone shut up, the Brit Harriers are having this. And there is no way he'd have done that if we'd been the guys to say, hey, we promised to come to that day in Brecon, no, we can't make it. Oh, the weather's a bit crap, we're not going to try. So that was a really good one, and that was that resulted in I dropped a weapon onto the corner of a compound from where the enemy were taking fire. So that was a good result, but completely born out of that relationship that takes years to put in place, and someone could do away with in seconds with a bit of dishonesty, a bit of buffoonery, etc.
And did you take that home with you? Like, so when you landed, did you take that home to your bunk wherever you were? Like, or did you just like kind of like put it out your mind, like you might have like hurt somebody or killed somebody, or was it like you can't I don't know, like just like shut it out?
No, I don't think you can, and that is one of the problems with being, not a problem, but a facet of being a close air support pilot, is that you've got a lot of responsibility. And where I did say, and I absolutely mean it, the heroes are obviously the guys on the ground.
Yes.
But you're the person who's, your unit of measure is 1,000 pounds of high explosive bomb. That's half a ton.
That's a lot.
So, that's, and I'm not making light of, but there's only so much damage you can do with a bullet from a pistol or a rifle.
Yes.
Whereas with a bomb, if you get that wrong, that's not something you're going to be able to walk off anytime soon. So no, those pressures were always upon us, but not necessarily in a what did I do perspective, because you'd get immediate feedback from the guys on the ground. Yeah. They'd say, yes, that was a hit, well done, and then you would go back. By the time you landed, everyone would know about your strike, so you'd have reported it to C2 on the way back. You'd then put in a mission report when you were back at the ranch, as it were, and then you'd correlate that with what the ground forces saw. Right. So by the time you actually go back to bed, it was a case of, no, job done. That's exactly why we're here. We're here to make the good guy's life as easy as possible, and that means making the bad guy's life as hard as possible, and that's what we were there for. So I don't recall any trouble with that, if you will. I think decompression was in its infancy then, so I don't think anyone really had much of a clue as to what to do with war fighters coming back from war. The ground troops used to go via Akrotiri, etc. But it was a good effort by the authorities, I think, knowing how little they knew. Yeah. But no, I don't think certainly no lasting effects.
That's fair enough. And how did you integrate with like the other air forces? The U.S. Air Force, French Air Force, when you were like in combat? Like, was there like a lot of like like talking to each other, like exchanging ideas, or?
Occasionally. So we got on well with the French Air Force Mirage that were in town, and there was a French Navy deck for a little bit with Super Hornets flying around. And we tried to come up with some combined con-op with the US Marine Corps Harriers that were in town. But by and large, you'd just get your job. And if you were involved in something where the guys needed support, you would do a quick bit of handover to someone. So, for example, I got involved in a quite high-octane caper once where we were tasked into a fight because the French were running out of weapons. Check in really quickly, and the French would say, essentially in heavily accented but perfect English, "Hi, this is us. This is what we're seeing. We've dropped 8 GBU whatevers. It still hasn't worked. The center of the fight is at this lat long." So you can be tapping away that game. Right. Okay, out you go, boys. I've got this. And then you talk to the JTAC on the ground and say, "Hello, it's me. I'm yours now." And likewise, the way that fight went, actually, we pretty much finished it off by the time we were due to be replaced. But we got replaced by F-18s, so they came in above us, and I was able to hand over to them to say, "Right, boys, just look down. This is what we're seeing. This is where the action has been. If you've got this, I'm going to go home because, to be honest, I'm running out of fuel." But so that level of interaction, and then there was also some nice sort of heartwarming teamwork at times, Mike. So, for example, if you were on the tanker and you heard someone joining that you knew was actually supporting troops in contact, you'd just say to the tanker, "Look, fill this guy up first." I remember doing that for an F-18. I remember a B-1B doing it for me. Well, if you get stuck behind a B-1B in the tanker queue, then you're going to be there for hours, aren't you? That, by the way, as far as a spectacle goes, pulling up alongside a tanker plugged into a B-1B is just like, wow, oh, goodness, that thing is just extraordinary.
What? So like you were, what was it, like? I'm guessing like two Harriers, like in B1B.
Oh well, we pulled up. He must have. I can't. He must have been about to take the boom, so I'm assuming that they had wingtip pods up. But they did say, look, just deal with these guys, and then we'll come on board. So they said, well, thank you very much indeed, because they check in for when you go on task. And you see all this when you're back on the ground. Everyone is sort of joined up by chat rooms, etc., as you would imagine. And you see an F-16 might check in and say, hey, I've got this many bombs and 50 minutes playtime. We used to always check in for about an hour, which source of great pride, that extra 10 minutes over the F-16. And little things. And then
you can hear all this in your helmet. You can hear all the chat.
If everyone's on the same frequency, then the B1 would turn up and go, 3 hours on task, 50 JDAMs or whatever. You go, oh my goodness,
and you're like, come on, son.
That is extraordinary. And also, I don't know if you've ever seen, but we had the same targeting pod as them.
Yes.
Because the sniper looks like a targeting pod on the bottom of the Harrier, doesn't it? On a B1, it looks like a little matchstick or something just sticking out that's bolted on the chin.
Yeah. But Paul, so how many missions did you actually fly over Afghanistan?
This would have been a great thing to have checked, wouldn't it? I don't know. Can I answer in the chat?
We're going to do a live Q&A.
Sort of July through October, November of 08.
But
and then I was lucky enough, Mike, to take when we lost a jet in theatre, I got the lucky ticket to take the jet in at night a couple of months later on my own. So that was quite an interesting sortie, because two of us left the UK, so we had a spare, flew to Cyprus, and everyone had been telling me about this. It was a great deal taking jets to Afghanistan because you used to stop in like Muscat or Seb or something like that. And for me, because it was the last time this was ever going to happen, and it was only me, they just said, we're going from Cyprus. So I went through Syria, and they told us off. They said, you're not allowed to have two aircraft in close company. One of you have to wait for 15 minutes. So I agreed with the tanker that I flew into Iraq and just circled for 15 minutes in Western Iraq. And there's a single seater with maps, going, this isn't actually the most comfortable 15 minutes of my life. And then just waiting for the tanker to turn up. And I remember the tanker coming in and saying, we're going to talk to air traffic and clear you up to the same level as us. By which time Mike said, mate, I'm already on your wing. I wasn't waiting for air traffic. I'm here. And so we then flew down the Gulf. But the tanker kissed me off in Dubai. And I then went on my own, again, I know Diddums, up through round Iran, through Pakistan, and up that way in the dark, going, well, I've never actually been this alone for so long. Usually you're part of a formation, part of a team. Yeah. This is an odd experience. But and I guess that was probably in 09 at some point.
Yeah, Paul, thank you very much for coming on the show. But can you tell us where we can get your book at the moment? Because I know it's been out recently and it's been doing absolutely fabulously well. So maybe you can tell us where we can get it.
Yeah, the book's available online. So the simplest way of finding the book would be to go to Amazon or something like that. So and just search up Harrier, How to Be a Fighter Pilot. But I do have a good steer for you, Mike. The Marlow Bookshop, or Marlow Bookshop, has its own website.
Okay.
And they've agreed that if you want a signed copy or want it personalised in any way, if you put that in the comments box, if you were to buy a copy, if that floats your boat, or any of your listeners, obviously, then they will give me a call and I'll be able to come down and personalise it however the person wants it. And because a couple of folk were asking about signed copies and personalised copies, etc., and I wasn't really sure how to do it, but they've kindly agreed to keep me in the loop. So if that's what people want, then that's a way to do it. So and that again, just search up Marlow Bookshop.
Yeah, and also, like, a few of our viewers have asked, like, can we get a signed copy? So, like, if they want to get a signed copy and they're obviously not in Marlow and they're in America, can we do that at all? Or do you have, like, a signed, like, plate or anything like that?
Well, that would be the way to do it. So they can still mail it out to anyone. Or I know that there's a couple of events coming up, for example, at Duxford later on in the year. I'm looking at doing an event there, etc.
Oh, so,
nice. Or to be honest, we spoke before, Mike. I'm on Twitter, Paul_Tremelling. If I can find someone, then it would be a pleasure to meet someone, sign the book, etc., answer any questions. So we don't need to be too rigid. But hopefully, between all those options, people can get what they want.
Absolutely. But Paul, thank you very much. Everything will be linked in the description, guys. But Paul, thank you very much for coming on for this follow-up chat. I really appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure, Mike. You take care.
Cheers.